Everyone, here we're going to take a look at this 2020 Lexus LC500h. The LC was introduced for the 2018 model year, and it's a grand touring car. So while it kind of looks like a hardcore sports car, it's really as much about comfort and serenity as it is about performance. The most famous grand touring car of all time is probably the Mercedes-Benz SL. Another popular one right now is the BMW 8 Series. And those two are probably the LC's top competitors, especially in terms of price. As equipped, this one is $105,000. That said, you can find much more expensive grand touring cars like the Aston Martin Vanquish, the Bentley Continental GT, the McLaren GT, and at the top of the pile is probably the Ferrari GTC4 Lusso. This is kind of a niche segment, not really for going to the racetrack as much as it is about being really comfortable on a long drive and having performance when you want it, though performance isn't necessarily this vehicle's top or only priority. So a lot to talk about with this one. It's a hybrid, which is really unique. It's very yellow, and it's got some cool features which we'll go over now. Styling's subjective, but I think it's fair to say that this is a very interesting car design. I have a hard time fully internalizing the design of this vehicle because it's just so varied. Sorry, it's kind of in a weird light right now, but things that stand out to me are the rear haunches really stick out on this vehicle. You can see them in your rear view mirror pretty much at all times. Another weird thing are these headlights. They look really diverse, we'll say, but when you look at them up close, it's really just this triangle shaped piece right here combined with an LED strip that runs down there, and then this kind of anodized silver plastic that runs down along the front fascia there. Really a shame that they've got a front license plate on this one because it kind of throws off the whole look. These wheels are enormous. Let's see, I think they're probably 21s. Yep, 21-inch wheels. They are pretty polished chrome with black inserts, and then the hub arrangement there is also black. Got Lexus on the brake calipers. Going down the side, you can see there's this big intake right here. I'm not sure if it's functional. I'm betting it's not. Hard to say for sure. One thing that's kind of weird about Toyota and Lexus is that they really go overboard with their hybrid badging. This is a $105,000 grand touring car, and kind of funny to see hybrid badging right there. Moving down the side, like I said, really enjoy the hindquarters of this vehicle. They really stick out. It's got what appears to be a really wide rear track. Black roof, chrome strips that run from the backs of the A-pillars all the way down the back. And then, of course, it's got that floating roof element. The only yellow part of the roof is just this strip that runs from the A-pillar back to what I guess are the C-pillars. This one has a sunroof that doesn't open, so it just has a cover that can be slid back to let light in. Here's the window, and then there's just a lot of black trim around the rear window as well that gives it really kind of a really cool look. It's hard to even describe it. Taillights include that silver color as well, so this is not part of the taillight. This is just a silver trim piece, and then this is a chrome trim piece along the top here with these arrow bits. And then the taillights themselves, this is a red reflector here. I'm not sure if that lights up, but main taillights are just this piece right in there. This is a hybrid, so you still get that blue halo around the Lexus logo. If you're into that, cool. Otherwise, I could do without it. Trunk's kind of interesting. So these grand touring cars are supposed to be as much about day-to-day livability as they are performance when you want it. So you generally expect them to have a larger trunk than, say, something like a Porsche 911 or an Audi R8. Pop the trunk on this one, which, well, I guess I gave it away there, but you'll notice there's really no handle underneath the trunk lid or around it. You actually open the trunk via this button integrated into the taillight here. So that pops, and then here's your trunk. So not huge. This vehicle is marketed toward a clientele that probably still does a lot of golfing. So I think you could probably fit 2 golf bags in there. It would be a little bit tight, but You could fit some luggage in there if you needed on a long trip. And then you've also got a back seat, which I'll demonstrate attempting to get into, but more often than not, you'll be using the back seat for storage as well, so that gives you a little more luggage space. Probably one of the best looking new vehicles on sale today, in my opinion, and it's really one that doesn't stand out much. Kind of funny how I've been driving it for the past few days, and people notice it, but the look on their faces tells you they don't really know what it is. I had somebody who at first glance thought it was a Lotus, and other people have just kind of looked at it with a confounding look on their faces. I think the fact that this one is yellow certainly makes it stand out more than if it were, say, silver or black. It would kind of blend in if it were any of those colors, but in this case, yellow really makes it pop. One of the quirkiest elements of the LC here are these door handles. I actually had someone on Instagram point out to me that this is the same exact door handle used on the Jaguar F-Type, and I did a little research myself, and it looks like that's the case. The way these work here is I have the key in my pocket, so I press that little dimple there to bring the door handle out, and then to actually open the door, you grab that. So kind of weird that you have to do two things to get in the car here. On a lot of vehicles, especially those with passive keyless entry, you just reach under a door handle and pull and it would open up. In this case, you've got to do two things. So to lock the car, you obviously would close the door and then you just press that in and it pulls itself in the rest of the way and locks. So I'll do this again. Press the dimple and it unlocks the car and shows you the door handle, and then it's not popped yet. At this point, there, it pops. And then to close it, so I'll press it in. I think it actually, yeah, so it goes in a little bit, pops back out, and then locks. So kind of interesting. Certainly one of the more noteworthy features on this vehicle. A lot of the other features and tech, which we'll get into in a moment, can be traced to other Lexus models, but the door handles are something very much unique to the LC. Anyway, moving on, let's hop inside and check out the LC's interior. Okay, you will find in this interior some of the highest quality materials and construction that you'll find in any vehicle anywhere. You're going to get top tier design that you know is going to hold up for years and years to come, which should help this vehicle offer better resale value down the road and hold its value better than the German alternatives. So I'm going to move my seat back a little bit because this cabin is comfortable, but only after you actually get in. You can see the seats have pretty high bolsters here. Really grip you. They're not uncomfortable. It's just getting in and out of them. You have to get around this huge bolster. And then once you're in them, you sit really deep down in the seat. Your back goes way far back into the seat here. And you're in there once you sit down. And then getting out of the car between the big doors, the long, heavy doors, and then how deeply bolstered the seats are. It's kind of tricky to get out. Anyway, let's turn this thing on. So this is the hybrid model, so you'll notice that there's no engine startup really, it just comes on. The engine did just kick on. You can see that you've got a digital gauge cluster, so fully digital, so there's this physical ring around it here, but this is really all screen in here. It's almost circle shaped. The tops of the circle are chopped off here. You do get Lexus's familiar infotainment system. Unfortunately, not a touchscreen. LC just has Apple CarPlay for 2020. It gets Android Auto for 2021. So to use the infotainment system, you've got to go through this touchpad system, and it's better than it's been in years past. Still just kind of odd to use. I'll see if I can get both things in view here. So it doesn't always move as far as you expect. So I'll try to go up one. Yeah, so it went up two there. There it went up one. There it went up one. So you get the hang of it after a while. It's just a little frustrating. So somebody who isn't really into technology might be a little bit frustrated that they've got to use this to control that. Another funny thing is that Lexus still includes their old school analog clock in their vehicles. I just find it kind of frustrating that they don't include a digital clock to go along with that analog clock here in the infotainment screen. The only digital clock in this cockpit is right here. So for the passenger to look at the clock, they've got to look at this old school analog clock. So that's a little weird. Cabin is driver oriented, so you get this kind of curvy design piece right here with a handle on it for the passenger. Actually, you get two handles for the passenger, one here and one there. None really for the driver, although you do get this little pocket here that's kind of helpful for pulling the door. In. Suede all on the door panels and on the ceiling and the A-pillars. So that's pretty nice. And suede in the seat inserts here. Really overall just real swoopy design. You can see you get these lines. I don't know how well you can make them out, but you get these lines in the door panel and it curves up into the dashboard, comes around. This is all behind a piece of clear plastic. There are some textured design elements in there, and then you get vents along here. So one vent there, up there, and then over on the left here. Oh, and then a fifth one right in the center. Open the glove box via this button right here. Speaking of the glove box, let's take a look at the window sticker. You can see this LC500h. I'll talk a little more about the powertrain in a minute, but you can see it gets 30 miles per gallon combined. That's pretty impressive, especially given that the non-hybrid V8 model averages only 19 miles per gallon combined. That said, in my few days here with the vehicle, I've averaged 22.3 miles per gallon combined. So this 30 mpg figure is subject to driver behavior. Like I said, $105,000 sticker price. The LC is built at the same plant where the Lexus LFA was built by a lot of the same people. A lot of good features and tech in this thing. A couple things are missing though. It doesn't have a 360-degree camera. You don't get Android Auto, but then again, people buying this vehicle aren't necessarily looking for those things. They're looking for driver excellence more than anything. Driving excellence, excuse me. And the LC definitely offers it. You've got paddle shifters here. The hybrid comes with kind of a weird transmission. It's technically just a 4-speed paired with a CVT. I'm not sure exactly how it works, so I don't want to say much more than that, but it's not a traditional transmission. I should touch on power and performance. So this is a 3.5-liter V6 engine paired with a hybrid system. Total output is 354 horsepower. The V8 model is a 5-liter V8. It's naturally aspirated. It's the same V8 that's been used in a few Lexus F models in previous years. Same V8 as in the non-hybrid LS as well. In the LC, it makes pretty good power. It makes 471 horsepower. And performance is actually pretty similar with these two, even given that the V8 LC makes, almost 120 more horsepower than the hybrid. So the V8 LC was clocked at 4.7 seconds 0 to 60. Hybrid here is rated at 4.8 seconds. So not that much slower. Not really any slower than the non-hybrid at all. But anyway, this thing does have a back seat. Suede inserts. We did use the back seat once. We hauled 3 people in this, including myself, on a little trip up the canyon to go for a hike. And if your passenger is willing to ride with their knees more or less in the dashboard, there can be room for a backseat passenger to put their legs on the floor, provided they aren't taller than about 5'4". But I would not buy this car if you plan on using the back seat more than like a couple times a year. That said, I will hop out and demonstrate how awkward it is for a 5'11" individual like myself to get into this back seat. Okay, you can see the seatbelt snaps to the seat, so you can undo a snap here. It's magnet, so that's nice. Just clips back on there pretty easily. And then here's a handle that pull the seat forward, and then power operated, it moves forward. Tiniest floor mat in the world back here. And then I will climb in. Okay. Ow, already hit my head on the ceiling. Yeah, I don't really have much headroom. So I'm in the seat and my head is right up against the glass. Not very comfortable. Not a whole lot of elbow room. Let's put the seat back in place and see if anyone could possibly sit up there with me sitting back here. So grab this guy. And then it's trying to come back. It's crushing me. Stop. Yeah, I don't have any knee room. Let's see if I can close this. Ow, hit my head on the ceiling. Okay, so yeah, there we go. So no knee room back here. That's surprising, but then look up here and you can see there's very little. So that's my driving position. I'm 5'11". This is where the seat would need to be for my 5'11" self to ride in this back seat, and you can see that's not exactly safe for the front seat passenger. So I wouldn't say that this back seat is really usable by anyone over 5'6", 5'7", and even then they won't be very comfortable. So works for the grandkids though, and given the target market of the LC here, that's probably who's most likely to be riding in the back seat. I want to undo this, so it's nice that moves forward on its own. Okay, now let's take this thing for a ride. One thing I wanted to add is how the key functions relative to the handles. So when the car's locked, handles stay in. When it's unlocked, the handles present themselves. When it's activating or unlocking the car via the passive keyless entry, you have to press the handle in. But if the car's already unlocked, like via the remote here, all you have to do is grab the underside of the handle. But after a while, see if it'll do it here, the car will relock itself and the handles will pull back in. There it goes. Lots to play with these very unorthodox door handles. Okay, now to drive the LC. This thing definitely achieves its goal of being a super premium grand touring car. So to touch on the grand touring segment, the most affordable vehicle that could arguably be included in the grand touring segment is the Ford Mustang. There's even a Ford Mustang GT model, which stands for grand touring. $45,000, you get a pretty fun little car that, in that case, is great on the racetrack, but also has a big trunk, has a somewhat usable back seat, and makes a pretty decent road trip vehicle. The high end of the grand touring segment would be vehicles like the Ferrari GTC 4 Lusso, or the Bentley Continental GT, or the McLaren GT. You can see that all three of those vehicles actually have GT in the name. Just realized that. And then in the middle, vehicles that would likely be cross-shopped with this one, Mercedes-Benz SL, that's the most famous grand touring vehicle of all time. And then the new BMW 8 Series, which really just used to be the 6 Series. Those are probably the two most obvious competitors to this vehicle. So, setting off, hybrid system is really kind of like it is on a Prius, except in this case, this car goes from 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds, and the Prius does not. We are under electric power now. Now the engine just kicked in. 354 horsepower is sufficient. It doesn't have that like roaring, throaty V8 experience that I do think a lot of people would want at this price point and in this segment. Excuse me. So I would like to see, I doubt Toyota would share the figures, or I doubt Lexus would share the sales mix between hybrid and V8 LCs. They've only sold, I think, in 2017, I looked it up, they sold about 2,500 of these, and that can be attributed to pent-up demand leading into the launch of the vehicle. And then in 2018 and 2019, I think they sold something like an average of 1,400 per year. So this really isn't a common vehicle, and I have to think that sales of the hybrid version are probably pretty low, honestly. So there's probably really not a lot of these out there, and especially not a lot in flare yellow with the hybrid. So this is probably an extremely unique vehicle I'm sitting in right now. Give it some gas. So it's quick. It's not like ruckusly fast. You know, it's not a supercar. It's subtle. The hybrid powertrain sounds a little weird. You get more whirring. It's not all over the place like in some Toyota hybrids. I drove the Lexus LS hybrid, and that vehicle felt like it didn't really know what it wanted. I walked away from the LS hybrid thinking that hybrid system is really kind of unbecoming of a vehicle like that. The LC here, I don't think it hurts the experience as much as it does in the LS. I don't mind the hybrid. And then the other thing is, this vehicle gets 11 mpg combined better than the V8 powered LC. So that's nothing to sneeze at. This thing gets 30 combined, the V8 LC gets 19 combined. So that's significant. I think the LS is more like a 6 mpg advantage for the hybrid, and that's probably not enough to sway me to the hybrid. But if I were buying an LC, the numbers make it a tougher decision with the LC, especially given that Car and Driver clocked the hybrid at 4.8 seconds 0 to 60 and clocked the V8 at 4.7 seconds 0 to 60. So pretty much parity there. Okay, we're on the on-ramp here. Can't go quite as fast as I would like to, but you can hear that V6. It's not quite as mean sounding as a V8, but the power is certainly there. So we're cruising at about 65 miles per hour right now. It's funny to see the revs drop so abruptly when the gas engine shuts off, because it's got that hybrid system to kind of bridge the gap between the engine being turned off and maximum engine power being needed. So as I'm driving along here, as I coast, the rev needle, which is a digital screen, will drop all the way down to 0, and then I'll just coast. There, it's at 0 now, and then I'll hit the gas, boom. So you get a little bit of hybrid power right when you tap the gas, but there's that moment where the engine hasn't even kicked on, and it's just hybrid power, and then the engine kicks on, and you're back up at 1,000 or 2,000 RPMs pretty quickly. So I'm gonna step on it, 45, oh, there we go. It sounds kind of like a supercharger, but we know it's not a supercharger. Driving experience is amazing. Interior quality is out of this world. Like, I'm pulling on this handle here, and it hardly moves. Just everything is rock solid. Everything's wrapped in leather or suede, and if it's not, it's got a really nice rubberized matte finish to it. This thing is excellence when it comes to craftsmanship and engineering, and it should be. It's built at the same plant that was responsible for the LFA supercar. Cruising along here, this is through a neighborhood. This thing is super comfortable. The hybrid system delivers power right away, which is nice. You get that really nice low-end torque. You don't have to wait for an engine to catch up to you. You've just got that hybrid battery that kicks in as soon as you touch the gas pedal. And I think that's really cool. I think it's fun. What we're seeing with Toyota hybrid systems is that they're finally starting to use them in a performance sense rather than purely for improved fuel efficiency. So sooner than later, you're going to want the hybrid system hands down, because it's exceptional fuel economy and better performance. Although in the case of the LC, not necessarily better than that 5-liter V8, which gives you an experience that you really can't get from anything other than a V8. So this vehicle is very serene, it's comfortable, it's stately, even in this psychotic yellow color. Turns a lot of heads, again, because it's yellow. Very comfortable. Not a crazy sports car, you know, nothing like an Audi R8 or a Porsche 911 Turbo.